I was once in a culture class in a Northern European country where I studied piano performance, the kind of session where you expect to sit quietly, take notes, maybe feel a polite kind of curiosity, and leave with a few harmless impressions about another culture. At first, I remember my attention opening up a bit, like I was ready to appreciate something unfamiliar. The video showed a pre-Christian people performing a ritual drum dance in a forest, raw and primitive. There was no violence on the screen, no obvious threat, but my chest reacted like an alarm had gone off, like something 1,000 years in my blood had been struck awake. The word that flashed through me was barbaric. I pulled back from it because the word felt too blunt, but the feeling did not go away. There was something feral in the movement. The emotion seemed to circle inside flesh and noise with nowhere anchored to go. It was alive, but the life felt trapped in its own heat. Then another word appeared: pagan. Confucius once said it is better to have a civilized land without a ruler than to have a ruler among the uncivilized. The question is not whether he was being arrogant, the question is why he believed the difference mattered so much. That classroom moment made me wonder whether the modern world had really transformed those old structures or whether it had only removed the visible drums and altars. The word pagan originally referred to someone outside the expanding Christian order, still living among older gods, local rituals, and inherited power. I use it here not as a precise name for those religions. Confucius would not have used the word in that historical sense. I mean a condition where human energy keeps moving, but nothing above it seems able to anchor where it should go. The modern person hears the word pagan and assumes it cannot describe him. He lives in a technological society that feels like enough evidence. That may be one of the most educated forms of silliness we have. Science has given us certain knowledge. Empirical methods protect us from fantasy when they are used inside the questions they can answer. The problem begins when measurement, which is meant to help us make decisions, slowly take over the role of deciding what matters in the first place. Once that happens, things that cannot be measured begin to feel less real or less important. The problem then unfolds in three stages. Measurement replaces value, systems replace personal judgment, and platforms organize emotion without morally forming it. So a society can become very good at building and scaling systems because those are measurable tasks, but when you ask what those systems are actually for or what they are meant to serve, the same clarity often disappears. Picture a frontier tribe preparing for a raid. The drum pulls the group into one rhythm. The chief claims to hear what the spirits require, but he is not standing above the movement as a judge. He is inside it, carried by the same fear and excitement as everyone else. A weak man is pushed outside of the protected circle because weakness is treated as contamination. Now place the same structure inside a modern institution. A person applies for a job, meets all the basic requirements, but is quietly filtered out because an automated system decides their profile is not a strong enough match. The rejection arrives as a polite email, and then it is given to a person with a connection to a higher spirit, well, to a powerful person. Neither the warrior nor the minister experiences himself as cruel. Each believes he is obeying something larger. The similarity is not cruelty itself, but the surrender of judgment to an authority that acts with force but without the humane cultivation behind these executions. The warrior says the spirits demanded it. The recruiter says the system made the call. By the time responsibility reaches the hiring manager or the algorithm designer, the rejected person has almost disappeared from the story. This is where modern people misunderstand barbarism. They expect cruelty to look emotional, dirty, and personally hateful. Sometimes cruelty is quiet, automated, and completed by people who remain polite throughout the day. Confucius said, "Guide them by virtue, keep them in line with the rites, and they will reform themselves." External compliance is not inward formation. A system may control behavior extremely well, while leaving the people inside it morally asleep. Confucius said that if people are guided only by punishments, they may avoid consequences without developing shame. Guide them through virtue and ritual, and something begins to change inside them. The chief once produced obedience through force. rituals. A modern system can produce the same result while everyone insists the process was correct. Consider another raid. Riders enter a settlement, take what can be moved, and leave the inhabitants with the damage. A financial raid can follow the same shape. Capital enters a fragile economy, buys control, extracts value, and then withdraws while local people absorb the collapse. The two events are not identical. No village needs to burn. In both cases, power extracts value while treating the weaker community's survival as secondary. But the moral surrender can be similar. The people directing the movement do not ask whether the weaker community remains capable of living afterward. They ask whether the extraction was legal and profitable. I'm not saying market laws or procedure are evil. Without them, arbitrary power can become even worse. The Confucian question is whether the person using the rule can still judge the force he serves. When nobody inside the system can say, this may be permitted, but it is wrong, removing the visible chief has changed less than we imagine. The same problem appears when human beings are reduced to usefulness. Imagine an old man in a tribe who can no longer hunt or carry water. The group decides that feeding him through winter is no longer worth the cost. Now imagine a city council meeting about homelessness. Nobody calls the homeless person worthless. They discuss public safety, budget constraints, and urban planning until the person slowly disappears inside the categories. The modern version is cleaner. That does not automatically make it more humane. Measurement is necessary when resources are limited. Pretending otherwise is sentimental dishonesty. But a metric can help a city council make a decision. It cannot tell the city council what a human being finally is. Utility becomes worship when the number stops helping judgment and starts replacing it. The moment usefulness becomes the highest court, anyone who cannot prove enough usefulness becomes difficult to defend. This is also why education does not automatically remove barbarism. In an olden pagan society, an expert might know the correct ritual, the right sign, the proper offering. That knowledge could make him effective inside the system without making him just. The modern expert may be courteous, highly educated, and emotionally controlled. That can make him more dangerous because the harm arrives without the signals people associate with cruelty. C.S. Lewis wrote, "We make men without chests and expect of them virtue and enterprise." His point was that intelligence cannot govern appetite by itself. Something inside the person has to be trained to recognize what deserves loyalty, restraint, courage, and disgust. Modern education often sharpens the head while treating that missing middle as an embarrassing superstition. Then sarcasm becomes a defense when a conversation moves beyond what can be measured. A person may respond with laughter instead of engagement. The laughter feels intelligent, but it functions to reduce human conditions to a number or render deeper moral questions obsolete, keeping any sense of obligation at a safe distance. Education does not automatically remove barbarism. Sometimes it only makes barbarism easier to administer, and modern people still participate in rituals. They laugh at the image of a tribe moving together in a forest, yet an algorithmic crowd can gather around an enemy without sharing physical space. The approved emotion becomes visible. People learn whom to punish before they have examined what happened. The platform rarely tells anyone what to say. It shows which reaction receives attention, and most people learn quickly. Shared emotion is not automatically bad. Every civilization needs mourning, worship, celebration, and public memory. The question is what the unity serves and whether there is a higher anchor. For Confucius, ritual was meant to shape the heart until right action becomes more natural. But when ritual is organized by attention rather than virtual, it does not form the person, it consumes him. The drum did not disappear, it became a personalized feed. I keep returning to that classroom and the moment inside the trees. At first I thought I was looking at something the modern world had left behind. Now I think the scene disturbed me because it revealed a structure modernity had learned to hide. None of this proves that the past was pure or that every inherited hierarchy deserves obedience. Confucius himself criticized the ritual when the form remained, but the humane substance had died. But removing every higher form does not leave a neutral human being behind. Something else fills the space. Appetite does, fear does. So does whichever system is powerful enough to organize them. We no longer name gods, but we still construct systems that absorb desire without judging it. Confucius would not begin by asking how advanced our tools are. He would ask what those tools are doing to the people who use them. Then he would ask something harder. When the system speaks through us, is there anything inside us capable of reflecting with heart and acting critically? Modernity proved that it could produce extraordinary power. It never proved that the people operating that power had become less barbaric.